I wouldn't change anything about that. That may be one of the best rye whiskies I have ever had in my life. Hey there, I'm Nath Martyn, the Whisky Scribe. Taste is subjective, whiskey is diverse, and this channel is all about understanding it well enough to enjoy it on your own terms. Now, I recently did a video series where I explored every country in the world that makes whiskey to a commercial standard today, and you wouldn't believe just how many countries there are actually making whiskey. Now, a lot of these don't always make it to Australia. We're a much smaller market, and so I thought a lot of them were out of grasp, but fortunately, I've got a whiskey friend, Uncle Baldrick.
I have a plan, sir.
Really, Baldrick? A cunning and subtle one?
Yes, sir.
Now, Uncle Baldrick and I often conspire to share whiskey samples between each other, so I'll send him Australian whiskies that don't always make it overseas because our production is a lot smaller, and he'll share with me whiskies that are perhaps readily available in the European market, but they don't always get here. So what I've got today is a sample from Millstone. Now, Millstone is from Holland, it's a Dutch whiskey, and Millstone does actually have a wide selection of whiskies that are available here in Australia, but most of what I've tried from them is single malt. They make single malt, they do it very, very well. It's very Scottish style. But what this is the 100 Rye. Now, I love their single malts. Their single malts are fantastic. If you ever offer me a Millstone single malt from Zuidam Distillery, I will always say yes. But this is a rye whiskey. And if I'm trying whiskies from another country, I kind of want to try something that's different somehow. Something that's not necessarily Scotch made elsewhere. So I'm hoping that this is going to give me a little bit more of a taste of the terroir of Holland. So the 100 Rye really centers itself on the whole 100 thing. So it's 100% single rye whiskey. That is 49% malted and 51% unmalted rye. Matured 100 months, 8 years and 4 months. In 100% new American oak barrels and bottled at 100 proof. So that's 50% ABV. And the distillery doesn't add color to their whiskey, nor do they chill filter. I'm a little bit OCD, so I do actually love the idea of centering everything around the number 100. It kind of worries me a little bit sometimes though when the age is specifically to 100 months. If they've decided to center everything here around 100 in all their marketing because at exactly 100 months is when it was just right, that's great. But I've always found anytime you're trying to hit a specific age mark, it's not necessarily the best age of the whiskey. But that being said, when it comes to rye whiskey, I do like my rye whiskeys at a higher ABV, so around about the 50% mark. That ticks a box. I don't think I've had many rye whiskeys that are aged more than like 5 or 6 years, so this should be interesting as well. So I'm just going to dive in and see what it's like. But because this is a 25ml sample, I've only got one chance to try it. I'm going to do it in the 1920s blender's glass, just to try and get as much out of it as I possibly can. Glencairns are great, but the 1920s blender's glass does really, really refine that nose to a point where you're getting a lot more out of it. Sometimes it just ruins the whiskey. If you've got a high ABV whiskey, it's just gonna laser point your nose. We should be okay with 50%. Oh my goodness. Look at that. That is, I've twirled that around in the glass and that still hasn't really started to form legs yet. This whiskey is so thick and oily. It is coating the edge of the glass and it hasn't even started to run down the edges yet. Oh, there we go. Okay, the legs are just starting to come down now. I always talk about loving an oily whiskey because those natural oils in the whiskey do hold on to a lot of flavors from the barrel, and then they also keep the flavors lingering around in your palate. They give you a great mouthfeel. That is like one of the oiliest whiskeys I've seen in a long time. So I'm already excited for this. I'm not going to jump ahead. I'm going to go with the nose first. It's interesting. Often when it comes to rye whiskies, you get like some really, really earthy notes. I'm getting a fair bit of like sort of very fresh green sort of notes coming through here. So there's still an earthy background element, but I'm getting like cut grass and stuff like that. Very ripe white fruits, so maybe somewhat ripe like stone fruits even. Like ripe apricots and nectarines. It's starting to turn more earthy now, but that nose is developing. So like I said, those natural oils, they do hold a lot of flavors in there. A lot of whiskeys like will have like a really definite nose, and each time you nose it, it smells the same, but this nose is changing over time as it sits in the glass. So that's pretty cool. Okay, I'm not going to do a whole video on the nose. Let's just go in for a taste. Proust. Oh. That oiliness there in the glass, that really comes across on the palate. It comes into your mouth like, that sounded bad. I'm going to reword that. So the way it feels on the palate is like this honeyed rye. So it's thick, it's oily, it's beautiful mouthfeel. It is like, it's like a honeyed version of rye whiskey. It is so thick and there's so much sweetness there as well. Actually, in all fairness, I would say the sweetness is probably about as even with the earthy notes. So I mentioned on the nose, it started out coming across quite green and fresh. What's come across on the palate is a little bit more on the earthy side of things. So you're getting wood and leather and spice and just enough sweetness to like perfectly balance with that. Oh God. That is beautifully done. I apologize for any comments I made about the age not being right, because that is pretty much done to perfection. That makes me think that at 100 months, it was just right. And they were like, hey, I want, you know, it's also 100% rye. It's also 100% virgin American oak. That is a beautifully well done rye whiskey. I wouldn't change anything about that. That may be one of the best rye whiskeys I have ever had in my life. Oh. I think you can actually buy this in Australia too. I think some places have it for around about $170 to $200. I might get a bottle of that because I want to drink more of this. Actually, you know what? It's interesting. I just started paying attention more to the finish, and those greener, fresher sort of notes actually come back on the finish. So the palate is rich and earthy and woody and leather and spice and a bit of honey. But then on the finish at the back of the palate, you start to get that little bit of freshness come back as well. Yeah, so that woody note turns into like more, a little bit like lighter pine. You get, yeah, like a little bit of like a fresh cut grass thing happening in the background. That is a journey of a whiskey. I love it. When people talk about a one-dimensional whiskey but say it still tastes good, that's where the nose, the palate, and the finish are all the same. So like you might pick up these three notes on the nose, that's then what you taste on the palate, and then that's what sticks around on your palate at the end. For the finish, that can be, a one-dimensional whiskey can still be really, really nice if all those flavors are just right. But this is definitely not a one-dimensional whiskey. This is like 3/4 dimensional whiskey, because the nose changes over time. The palate is different to the nose. And then when you go into the finish, that palate then morphs into this amalgamation between the palate and the nose. It's a journey. And I think if you sat down with this whiskey and really appreciated it over time, I think those flavors would keep changing. Yeah. Okay, I would say who this whiskey is for. if you are somebody who likes a rye whiskey, you're definitely going to like this. I think if you're somebody who prefers Scotch, but you don't mind dabbling in rye whiskey now and then, this is definitely going to appeal to you, because it's got a little bit more of the complexity that you tend to get with a Scottish style whiskey, but coming across through the rye. Now, I know in Australia this is a slightly higher price point. It's around about that $170 to $200 mark. I think it's worth it. I think as a nice gift whiskey, or like where you're really going to treat yourself, this is like the quality matches the price on this one. I am seriously probably going to buy a bottle of it. That's, out of all these European whiskies that Uncle Baldrick sent me this time, this has definitely been my favorite so far. And I really like that Carpathian single malt. So thank you so much, Uncle Baldrick. I really, really enjoyed that. I hope the rest of them come across this well as well. But I've got nothing to toast with at the end here because I finished this off. But I'll just say for now, if you want to see more of these sorts of whiskey review videos where I always try to honestly give my feedback on the whiskey and also tell you who I think it would suit. You know, I like a wide array of whiskeys, but not everything I like would suit each individual whiskey drinker. So I always try to let you know approximately who I think it is for, what sort of whiskey drinker. So hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of that sort of thing. But this was a wonderful whiskey, and I'll say enjoy what's in your glass, hopefully as much as I enjoyed that, but no matter where it's from. And Slange, or Prost, or wherever you are enjoying a dram. There's a little bit left, I'm going to try and get it.